how to get over addictions naturally. Now, many times when we have these addictions, especially if it's not serious addictions, right? If you're, going through something really serious, and of course, seek medical help. But most of us are struggling with some form of addiction. And we're talking about addiction, we're talking about a physical or a mental dependency on a particular substance or activity. So this could be that glass of wine that you have to take every day. It could even be something as simple as the coffee that you cannot operate without, right? But a lot of people are dealing with some harder addictions as well, things like smoking, porn, and sex, right? These are a lot of the things that men are dealing with. But the first thing you want to do, especially if you want to deal with these addictions naturally, right, is to recognize that the action that you're dependent upon is not the problem. What is the problem is there is something within you that you are avoiding. This could be a particular feeling like loneliness, frustration, pain, or it could be some form of unresolved trauma from your childhood, and so you've developed a coping mechanism to ensure that you don't need to deal with the pain head on. So the first step when dealing with the addiction is to recognize, right, that you are doing these behaviors to protect yourself, not to hurt yourself. And so it's important that you do not shame yourself about the behavior, because this will have the opposite effect. It might help you to stop for a moment, but if you are shaming yourself trying to change, the likelihood is you're going to go back to the habit. So the first thing is recognize I am doing this because it is in some way perceived to keep me safe. The second thing to do is to recognize what triggers the behavior. So once you've recognized that I'm doing this to protect myself, now you have to recognize what is it that you're protecting yourself from. Now, for me, there was a time when I used to smoke a lot of weed, right? And then I realized what I was doing for me, it helped me to deal with loneliness, right? I'm a single guy that lives by himself, right? And I find it hard to have really close relationships, like physically close relationships, which is something I actually enjoy in a sense, but sometimes it got hard. So I recognized that this is the feeling of loneliness I was avoiding because of the weed. But what I started to do when I recognized that is that when that trigger came up, rather than me just acting straight away, right, I would stop, I would pause, and I would identify what was coming up. And then what I started to do is I actually started to show gratitude and love towards that trigger, because I recognized that the trigger was showing me somewhere where I needed to develop, right? I was going to change. It was a problem that I can deal with so that I could become a better man. And so I started to give thanks for that trigger, and I also started to pray for the strength to be able to deal with that so that it never came back again. Now, it's important to note, right, that this is a journey that you need to be patient with yourself. From you start to recognize what that trigger is, you are then going to need to find a way to give yourself the same feeling, so to fulfill that need without the thing that you are addicted to. Now, this typically, and for me, right, took meditation and journaling. So I would meditate on that trigger, right? If it came up during the day, why am I feeling lonely? What could I do differently? And then I would journal about it, right? But it's important when you do these things to also ensure that you are dealing with the thoughts that are going to come up, because there will be shame and all of these other things that would come up. But you need to recognize that the moment that you have made that commitment to change, at that moment you have become a different person. And so the shame is no longer directed at the person that you are, but it is the shame on the person that you was, and you are no longer that person. And then the final step is finding ways, right, to fill that perceived lack with habits that are healthy and that give you energy. So that could be whenever let's say it's you're trying to deal with anger, for example, or frustration, right? Things that are typical to deal with. You could say, the next time I'm triggered and I feel angry or I feel frustrated, I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing. I'm going to pause. I'm going to give thanks for the trigger, and I'm going to go for a walk, right? Now, you may be in a situation where you can't do this. Let's say if you're in an office or something like that, or you work on a shop floor, right? So it's important that you find ways to deal with the emotions healthily that match what your lifestyle provides. Because a lot of people will tell you, yep, if you're angry, go and work out. But let's say if you work in a warehouse, for example, and you're always busy, it might be impossible for you to just drop and do 20 push-ups. So it's important that you become your own, almost like your own therapist, where you say, what are the things that I need to do some research, try a couple things out. Because what will start to happen is that over time, even with other triggers that come up, you will develop the skill of knowing what to do to handle your emotions. And this is the basis of emotional intelligence. And the moment that you do that, and this is what happened for me, the moment that the mind, the emotions, and the body align on what it is that you truly need to do, the likelihood is that the addiction would not even have a place in your life. Now, this doesn't mean that you won't have to deal with the withdrawal, because that's going to be the physical detox. And what that will mean is that the desire to do the thing will naturally fall away, right? It might take a little bit of willpower to deal with the body's impulse for it, but the mind and the emotions and the body will be aligned, and so you will have the power behind you and the strength to be able to do this. And you can do this as long as it's nothing too serious, right? Where you may need some medical help if you're addicted to some things that are going to completely wreck your body, then of course, right, if you need to go to a rehab center or something like that, definitely do that. But we're just talking about little things like if you're smoking cigarettes or you drinking, and some things that you can actually deal with yourself, as long as, again, right, is not going to completely destroy your body. These things will naturally fall off, and the only thing you would then need to deal with is the withdrawal. And the best thing about this is after the withdrawal, there'll be a release of energy, right? After the plateau, the dip, right, which is going to happen, which is natural. As long as you prepare yourself mentally for this, it won't hit you as hard, right? You start to fill that gap with positive and healthy things that give you what you need. It will be such a smooth and natural occurrence, right? It'll just kind of happen. This is just what I do now. I don't identify with this thing. I'm not a smoker. I am not a drinker. I am who I am. This is how I live my life. This is how I want to live my life. And you will naturally, after the plateau, see a spike in energy because your body is no longer using energy to heal from the effects of the addiction. So guys, I hope that this shed a little bit of light on how you can deal with some addictions naturally. Remember, there's most things in this world you can do yourself. You have got that spiritual core within you to handle it. So if you do want help or support, right, or coaching to go through this process, make sure that you book your one-on-one coaching session with me. There'll be a link in the description. And last but not least, guys, always remember that you are perfect by design.